The last few weeks, I've been sewing all these fabric face masks. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how I've been making them. So stick around for that. Hello and welcome to my handmade lifestyle. I'm Patty and I go by Patty Mac Makes everywhere online. So let's jump into today's video. Something I did that's a little bit different is I took my bias tape and I cut 7-inch strips and then I sewed them into the corners. And you use a little less binding tape that way. Binding tape is expensive. It's either expensive if you're buying it or it's a lot of work if you're making it. So instead of running this length of bias tape, plus it's hard on the sewing machine because bias tape is thick. And anyway, let me just show you. So you tie one side, it goes around the ear. You bring it around. And you tie it on the other ear. Voila, there you have it. So I went with the pleated version and I like it. I only did 2 pleats, so it's a little easier to sew. You can see before you put it on, it's really narrow. And the good thing about that is you get a better fit on the side. So it's got the pleats, and so as you put it on, it does open up. So you are covering here. But because it's narrow here, you have much better coverage. And then with that wire, you can shape it to your face. And I've been wearing these. I don't have any issues with my glasses fogging up. Some people have reported that on the pleated mask, their glasses fog. I don't have that problem. I'm also going to add that this is for private use only. This is if you're somebody at home who wants to make fabric face masks for yourself, for your own family. I would try a few different masks. Probably the Olsen mask might be a better choice if you want to sew for frontline healthcare workers. But if you want to just see a regular person at home trying to put one of these things together, I'm your girl. So, okay, without any further ado, let's jump into the tutorial. To get started, I'm making this fabric mask. I have my fabric pieces cut, and I like to use a print side and a solid side. And I always keep the solid as my inside piece. So I have 2 of those, and that is cut 12 across by 8. I've got my piece of floral wire. It's been cut in a 12-inch length, and then I've just folded it in half. And then I've got my bias tape in one long piece, and it is 28 inches long. I find it helpful to cut a pattern piece, which I've done here. I use brown paper. I have a bunch of this on hand. This is the kind of paper that you use to wrap packages. You could also use paper grocery bags. It's the same kind of paper. And I like it because if I have my pattern cut and ready, I know that I cut everything the same. And because I use the cutting mat with the rotary tools, I can cut a whole stack of these at once really easily. And I know a lot of people can just remember. I can't remember. So I just cut my pattern piece, and then I always know that I'm cutting them the right way. Now you can add a third component with the flannel, and that is recommended for like a filter type piece. You can have flannel pieces to go inside of your mask. So that is an option for you to do. And this is just your regular cuddle flannel, baby flannel. It's very soft. The first thing that I do when I start to make the mask is I'm going to take that bias tape and I'm going to do something that we call a top stitch. And what that does is makes sure that all of that fabric, it's folded, and so we don't want it to be like coming apart. We want to keep that in one unit. So what I'm going to do is first just run one line of straight stitching the whole length of the bias tape. And then I will cut it into its 7-inch segments. And then we'll put that to the side. And then we will take our mask fabric and we're going to make sure that it's already been washed and dried and pressed out so it's ready to work with. And then we put our right sides together. When we sew, we're always sewing with the inside out so that we turn it and then all of the seams are inside. So I'm going to make sure that I have my right sides together. And what I'm going to do is a little bit of a top seam to get those pieces together. Then I'm going to take my floral wire, I'm going to twist it so that it stays together and it makes like one strong piece of wire. Then I'm going to open up the mask and I'm going to take that wire and right next to the seam that I've made, the stitching line, I'm going to lay that wire in place. And what I'm going to do is then go to a zigzag stitch. I'm going to make it the widest stitch that I can go. And I'm going to very, very carefully zigzag stitch over top of that wire so that I stitch it into the back side of the fabric that's facing the face. I'm going to leave a little bit of space at either end of the wire so that when I'm done stitching, I can just very carefully fold the ends around the stitching, and then that will hold the wire in place. Once I have that done, I'm going to go over to the ironing board and I'm going to then make my bottom seams. What I will do is fold 1/4 inch and press that down, and then another 1/4 inch and press that down. And what this will do is encases the raw edge of the fabric, and I'm going to then stitch that down on the machine. Now what I'm going to do is turn the fabric so that the right sides are together, and then I'm going to pin those 7-inch segments of the bias tape into the corners. I make sure that the stitched edge is facing towards each other. It just looks neater when you turn your mask out. It's not required, but slip your bias tape to the corners, pin that so it stays, and then pin your edges. And then what we're going to do is to stitch the remaining sides.
So what we're going to do now is make sure that we leave an opening, and I leave the opening at the edge where we enclosed the raw edges. That way, if you want to put a filter in and out, you've got a nice seamed edge. You're not going to have fabric fraying over time as you're moving and replacing filters. So we're going to make sure that we leave 4 inches open on that bottom to turn our work. And now let's just stitch the whole thing together. I do recommend going over the corners with the bias tape, just forward and back stitch a couple of times in that corner, and then you know that it's really secure, because you want to make sure that that part of your mask is secure. Now let's clip the corners so that we get rid of the bulk. If you have kind of wide seam allowances, it's no problem. Just trim those down so that they're not quite as bulky. Now we turn our mask right side out. We're going to go back to the ironing board. We're going to press everything nice and flat. And then what we're going to do is just I just eyeball it. I'm gonna eyeball the pleats and eyeball the pleats, and then I press them into place. And then I'm gonna pin them on the edge so that they stay put. Then you come back to your sewing machine, and now what we're going to do is stitch down those edges so that our pleats will stay in place. And I would go over the pleats a couple or 3 times, forward and back stitch, just to make sure that they stay put. And when that's done, I would give it one final press, and then your mask is all ready to go.
It gives you reasonable coverage. Nothing is going to be N95. Okay, let's just be perfectly clear and honest about that. Nothing is going to be that. But the CDC does recommend that we wear fabric masks when we are out and about, and I think this is a reasonable alternative for you. So, there you have it. But I'm not a doctor. This is not a medical video. This is just a home sewist making a project and sharing it with you. And that's all it is. So we're going to leave it at that. And if you choose to make this, let me know. like to hear how it went for you. And yeah, I'm gonna link to my other video that is like a resource guide, because there's a lot of information out about making fabric masks, and there's a lot of other tutorials and videos on that. So I'm going to link to that up here. It's also in the down bar. Have a look, go to the blog post. I'll link you to all of the resources there, and you can kind of make your own decision about what works for you and your family. But in any event, stay healthy, stay safe, and just, follow the guidelines. That's today's video, and I sure appreciate you hanging out. Okay, I will see you in the next video. Until then, bye-bye.